feature presentation.
Bill Turner, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
A question I wanted to ask the two of you before even getting into Gasoline Rainbow, about your careers, but also about documentary filmmaking. There's been a conversation that's been going on recently with animation not being a genre, but a medium in which to tell stories. And I wanted to ask the two of you if you thought the same about documentary, because no documentary is the same in terms of subject and storytelling and the focus. And I was curious to get your thoughts on that, but also how do you categorize your filmography? Because I never feel like it's one thing, and to put it into binary terms might do it a disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just don't talk about it like that. Don't feel the need to categorize it. It's, one of us will come to the other with an idea, and it's never, oh, this is a fiction, this is a documentary. It's just, how do we tell that story? And that needle moves whichever way it needs to in order to tell the story in the way that we're imagining it and talking about it.
Yeah, I think the documentary community, especially in the last couple decades, has been a place with many subheadings. It's been a ground on which we can create new ways of making things. I think we've deviated from the rules of what should be under the banner of that. But I'll let smarter people speak to that. We really have just developed a method by which we work, which is evolving every time we make something new. And yeah, I'm glad we were embraced by that world, continue to be embraced by that world for so long. But what we're doing is a conversation between the two of us that happens to mine natural resources in its making.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned your method. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of your method through your 6 films, but specifically going from such a wonderful movie like Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets to Gasoline Rainbow? And was there anything from that previous film that you learned that you brought into the next?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we take the experiences of the previous films, and they always, end up in the next. T, if you want to speak to it more.
Yeah, I mean, when we started down this path, it was just the two of us and 2 cameras and a broad idea. We filmed every day, all day for an entire year, sort of, following a web of thoughts and ideas, and it ended up with an immense amount of footage that we let speak to us to inform us in the making of our first film. Since that time, we've continued to harness it more and more. To the point where, yeah, Bloody Nose, we had reduced it down to 1 room, 1 night, a cast set of characters, a series of intentions, and a basic narrative arc. And then within that, it's documentary. And this time, we've taken that a step further in that 6 days of screen time is 6 weeks of choreographed movements through space, locations, situations, with an enormous cast all told. And each day became its own pocket. So sort of crystallizing the experiences so that we can have more freedom within them. It's less, each one has its looseness. In the beginning, when we started out, it was just entirely loose. We were out there like we were fishing. And now we create the barrels in which to shoot the fish.
Right. And that actually is a really great metaphor. A question that I have about the evolution of Gasoline Rainbow: where do you start with a project like this? And also, is there a focus point that you continually want to come back to with the themes and the narrative? Because obviously with, the road trip movie, the coming of age film, again, we're talking about categorizing things. I felt like watching this, you mentioned space, that this was a movie about exploration of space, not, going from planet to planet, but leaving your small town and seeing a bigger picture and a bigger world. And I wanted to know if that was something you saw, because even the references to Neil Armstrong or Patrick Stewart in the movie felt like it was a way to explore space.
I'm so glad those things registered with you. Yeah, absolutely. It's each day, and you know, the our five leads, they knew that we were, you know, this was a road trip film, and that we would eventually end up at the coast. Um, each day we would get together and we would say, this is where we left off, and this is where we hope to end up today. And we would set the intention sort of emotionally, but between point A and point B, that was theirs to interpret. So they would, you know, and sometimes we would veer off course and with whatever was exciting to them that day. But yeah, so we would have like a shooting script. But no, you know, the lines are their own, the experiences are their own.
Yeah, each film, to your other point, each film starts with, starts with an intention, sort of a story intention. Then there's always an underlying theme, the things that we're talking about while we're making it. There's usually a location, you know, some sort of setting to backdrop things and inform that, and then a cast. So in this case, we wanted to tell a linear story about a journey that moved us through space and time. That was something, you know, technically within house we wanted to do. So we were in Bloody Nose, we were in one room for one night. Well, now let's be in a series of rooms over time. That was something we were challenged by. That space then also informs the story. You go through a journey just visually with the space. The landscape changes as the human landscape changes. And the undercurrent of all those things, the conversations that either are in there, sometimes seeping to the surface, but are mostly underneath, are the things that we talk about while we're making it. Like, Lewis and Clark, Neil Armstrong and the mission to the moon, you know, these things are our conversations underneath it all, and sort of help inform and drive what we're doing.
Well, even the sound of the van when, you know, the five leads get into the vehicle for the first time, it sounds like it's blasting off into outer space as it leaves
You are a
Wiley
good
to.
viewer, man. You are a good viewer. That
Well, what can I say? I love, you know, watching movies that play with sound design in an interesting way as well. And is that something you're thinking about when it comes to sound during the script writing process, or is that something as well where you're open to incorporating it into the narrative? Because there's an element where, you know, you can't control everything, especially, you know, one sequence where they're talking about wind and how windy it is in a moment.
Mm-hmm. Again, thank you for noting that.
Yeah, in the rough cut, it actually was the sound of a rocket taking off.
Yeah, it was beat you over the head with this is a rocket ship taking off. So we had to dial that back a little bit, but you know, a particular moment like that would not have been like on the page before we started shooting. The fun part of the way we work is finding these things as we're making them. So you know, that particular shot, the field audio is horrendous. It's just we're like, well, that sounds like a rocket ship. Actually, they're taking off. You know, so it's like it's just it's like, all right, let's play with that.
It's coming back to those subterranean ideas that we have going into the project, that then when we come home, we always go back through all of that stuff. What inspired it? Where were we coming from? Where are all those thoughts and ideas? And then going through the footage and piecing it together, they start to emerge again and become incorporated stylistically, usually, or just as conversation. But, you know, understanding what motivated where we ended up.
Absolutely. When you're making a movie, you know, obviously you start from the writing stage, and the collaboration process is important. And the cast is also credited for additional photography. When you're talking to your cast members, I was reading an IndieWire article where you talked about the late Michael Martin and giving sort of or notes in terms of direction, and mentioning Michael Jeter's performance in Grand Hotel. were there any notes to your cast members for this that you gave, or any references in terms of what they were looking for, or did you want to sort of keep it with, you know, their performance and letting them find or discover who these people are, or their characters themselves?
Yeah, with Michael, that was much more of a performance, and he's, you know, was a professional actor, so we could really talk to him about what we were going for and give him these references and talk about really the heart of the film and where, I mean, he really steered that entire film, and like the energy of that room, and what he did in that film is incredible. With our 5 leads in this film, while we would set an intention with them each day, we really wanted to see them, who they are on screen. We cast them because we just fell in love with them, and we didn't want to fuck with that too much.
Yeah, we would talk more about emotions and intentions with them, but that was, they were specific. You know, other people along the way, the older folks they encounter along the way had lots of,
Yeah.
you know, when you're talking about Star Trek, you might pick up on, you know, you might be that Patrick Stewart, or you know, late night on the houseboat, you might, you know, Tom Bombadil might resonate in a conversation.
I thought Clayton might be the Tom Bombadil of this movie.
Well, he
absolutely-
thought he was, yeah.
No, I mean, the kids had actually fallen asleep, and Clayton pulled me aside and said, "Turner, I think I get it, man. I think my character is kind of like Tom Bombadil, you know? That character was badass. It's like he helped them on their journey, but he couldn't take them there." Like, yeah,
But it makes them coffee and breakfast and gives them a place to stay, and there's something so comforting about that. And you've talked about space, you've talked about landscape. I wanted to ask the two of you if the time of day plays an important role in the character's trajectory, because the 5 leads seem to come to life at night in a way that maybe they don't during the daytime.
well, that's also the byproduct of youth and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
If you spend your nights, you're stealing joy from tomorrow. So, you know, morning.
Yeah. Takes a while to ramp up.
But yeah, I mean, we do think about it like that.
For sure.
As we're composing it, we talk about things like color and time of day and light, and all of that goes into arriving at the moment, and then in the moment we're present for it.
Was there a moment that you were most taken by surprise in the filming of Gasoline Rainbow? Something that you weren't expecting that, you know, organically came to fruition? Because a lot of your movies, especially, I was thinking this is going to be a lot like Tchoupitoulas in a way, and it's not. It feels like it's its own thing, even though you could say, you know, again, putting it in a category of coming of age and what have you, but it feels like the movie is evolving as it's going on, and to the point of even the introduction of the characters through the student ID to who they are at the end of this story.
Mhm.
You're picking it up.
Yeah, every day. Okay. I'm trying to think of an example, but it's just like every day. I mean, we like with a lot of the other films, it's like winding it up to let it go, and then once it goes, you're just constantly surprised. You know, whether it be something that somebody says, or Mackay doing a backflip in the middle of a rave, which we didn't know that we would be there that day, or that he could do a backflip.
Or a biker gang showing up at the skate park. You know,
Yeah, the biker gang showing up at the skate park, and we're like, are we in danger? What's happening?
or a beautiful sunset. I mean, every
Yeah.
day it's primed. The pump is primed for surprise that we can be available to, and also in the way that we shot this one intentionally was from front to back as a linear story, so that, yeah, as we moved from school IDs to the end of the world, it would cumulatively get looser and richer and more engaging and more emotional, because they really are going on a journey, on an emotional journey, on an adventure. And at the end of it, when there are tears rolling down their eyes and their faces look, you know, world weary, so different from the beginning, that juxtaposition, if you turn the camera around, we looked the same way. It was something that we were doing together, and we knew that if we believed in that process enough, that we would all arrive there in that cathartic moment, and we did.
Absolutely. And you feel that moment at the end, and it all kind of clicks together in that way where, you know, this is the last kind of hurrah for these characters maybe together, but at the same time, you know, there's the future, and the unknown is always scary, but at least, you know that in the past, maybe you had people in your lives that, you know, can be there for you. In terms of structure and playing with the narrative and the looseness of it, was there more emphasis in terms of, you know, putting together a little bit more of a structure to the narrative with the train sequence? Because that scene feels both thrilling and in the moment, but I can't imagine how much work went into putting together a sequence like that.
You would be right.
Uh,
Isn't that funny
yeah.
though, that the most that the loosest and most wild parts of the film, usually without fail, are the ones that were required to be most composed. And I think that's actually something that we're learning beneficially from, because the more that we do consider the conditions, the scenario, the crew, the cast, the situation, the intention, you know, what that is, the more we refine that down, the more open the space is that we create, the more loose it can be within it. And it's definitely a direction that we continue to go in.
Absolutely. Do you consider yourselves at...
Sorry to jump in so quickly. We
no
just
worries.
have one more question, sadly, Eric.
Oh, no, it's okay. Quickly, I just wanted to ask you, do you guys consider yourselves editors in the writing stage? And are you editing yourselves as you're going along?
I think every hat is worn every step of the way. From editing to writing. I mean, I feel like we're writing while we're editing, and we're editing while we're writing, and everything is in play. Even while we're shooting, we're editing and we're writing. So everything is very alive in every step of the journey.
I think as we talk about it, it's less about editing, which is, you know, where we're going to end up. You have to kill your darlings at the end and compose this thing and do it justice. But we try not to set limitations. We have structure, but not limitations. And when we talk about it, we talk about it more as writing 3 times. You write in pre-production so that you can arrive in production. You write during production within the experience, and then you have to write it again in the edit. And that then leads to the final version of it. And now I guess we get to write the trajectory of it and the conversation, but the life of this thing becomes something that's out of our hands and is written by others, which is very fascinating.
Well, then even when the movie comes to theaters or festivals, it has its own life as well, and people interpret things and project on them. And so, you know, you're having this conversation, and this conversation, I really appreciate you guys talking to me and your filmography. I love all the films that you've done, and I always am so excited to hear that you're working on something like this. It's always wonderful. Thank you,
Eric. Thank you for such a good conversation, man. This was also very full of life. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks. I appreciate it. But yeah, again, I love your guys' work, so it makes it very easy to do.
Well, let's talk next time.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And thanks, Jamie, and thanks, Corey. I really appreciate it.